Okay, so today I thought I would make some Chaos Spawn. So I do love the sprue. There's so many different options, but the bodies I still think are fairly uniform for a spawn. They still look semi-humanoid. So I'm going to lop the legs off one and make it like a spider lower half. Just mess around with loads of different options. Right? Okay. I really do love this sprue, but it is quite dated now. Very much like the Chaos Possessed kit, the faces look a bit goofy, but as you can probably tell on the kit itself, that's very ornate. 3 heads there would be pretty good for a Nurgle conversion or even a fly head. That was pretty cool. What else have we got here? We've got loads of tentacly things, which is obviously quite Nurgle-esque. What's left of some scabby looking wings, which would be pretty good. And this kit would be pretty good if you can convert it into a Demon Prince, possibly. That being said, the Demon Prince kit itself, it's a very good torso if you wanted to make another spawn. So you can have up to 5 spawns, I think, in a unit. So yeah, why not? Get it converting, let your imagination run wild, which is what I'll do with this kit. So there's my first one. So I'm going to do the first one as a generic basic shape, like they normally are. I put a bit of heat on the spines to make them a bit more wibbly. Yes, that's a technical term. So a bit more natural, or unnatural if you look at this thing. So he's got some kind of crab claw, some weird talon there, some tentacle, and then a regular arm holding a massive eye. And then I'll carry on with the, well, probably going to make another 2. So I want to get the Demon Prince body and turn that into one. And then I want the next torso, I'm probably going to cut his legs off, as you do, and try to make a spider-like body for it. Okay, so I've got 2 Chaos Spawn models here that I've assembled. So the first one is what I call the generic Chaos Spawn kind of pose. So using the stuff out of the kit, both models kind of lean to one side. They look very similar. Now I know it's a little bit shiny at the moment. I've used a rattle can to prime it, but I will be using some airbrush black in a minute to get that shine down a little bit. Put a nice texture down. So I've glued a hand and eye combo thing there, which I thought looked a little bit creepy. But I think it looks a bit cartoony. The whole kit looks a bit aged now and cartoony. The spines at the back were a bit too straight, a bit too perfect, so I've heated them up, warped them a little bit, made them a bit more natural, a bit more bent, a bit more scary. But it doesn't look scary. I was thinking about maybe putting like a loincloth or something on it, because that tiny little thing is weird and not scary. The whole thing doesn't look very scary. Now I'm hoping my paint job can add a bit of creep to it, but it just looks a bit cartoony. I mean, you can. It's a great kit regards, there's so many different variants, and me being so indecisive, took a long time for me to decide how I'm going to assemble it. But I didn't want 2 to be similar, you know, because it's the same basic triangle of a body, you know, very wide shoulders, stuff you could come out, like tentacles could come out the side, pincers could come out the side, and that's fine, you know, that's okay, you know, so whatever. What I really struggle with is it shouldn't be symmetrical, and I really want to put like 2 pincers either side or tentacles either side, make it nice and even. But there's supposed to be like a mutated ball of flesh with random things coming out of it, splitting open, folding on itself. Something from like Hellraiser. You know, I love that kind of era of films and that kind of style of film, and this doesn't really, it's not very creepy. Like, I want to aim towards something like The Thing, which is another great horror film. So what I've done is, the second one, I've cut its legs off, and I've used its legs in another project actually. And I had all like the pincer kind of spindly legs, and glued it to his buns. So his buns were there, and I made it a bit more spider-like. I didn't want it too smooth a tushy. And I've put some weird kind of like spiky bits on his back. And I've put 1 claw on there. I didn't want 2 because A, I don't want it symmetrical, and B, didn't want to look too crab-like. And then one very enlarged demonic kind of hand. 2 eyes, and there's the gaping stump, which I thought was pretty cool, a bit more spider-like. I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah, I've got several points of contact on the base, so he's not going to fall over. I know it's quite spindly, but it should have 6 points of contact. Fairly really even, it's not really going to tip over. And I'm going to glue that to the 50mm bases that these guys are on, which is a bit different. You don't normally get 50mm bases very often in 40k, or even in AOS, I don't think that much. And I can't make these guys look too much like my World Eaters, or too much like my Bloodbound kind of stuff, because I want to use it like the beauty of Chaos. I want to use it in 40k and AOS. But I think this one looks a bit more creepy. I like this. So I might do another Chaos Spawn video at another stage. A bit more green stuff possibly, rather than just filling in some gaps. Making it look really creepy. I mean, that looks weird and wonderful and bits of everything. And I'm hoping the paint job will make it look a bit more menacing. Whereas that looks a bit more like stuff out of Nightmares. You know? But like I said, I really am struggling trying not to make it symmetrical. So humanoid, you know, one arm one side, one arm the other side, one leg one side, one leg. I want it random. So like even the spider legs aren't perfect. They are random, different legs. And that claw, if you're wondering, is actually a Tyranid claw, which I think was pretty cool. So I am slowly getting some Tyranid pieces to one side. Still got loads of stuff on the Chaos Sprue kit. It's wicked. There's so many different eyes and spines and things like that. And I like all the heads, to be fair. And I'm keeping that to one side as well. And there's a couple other boxes that have some cool miniature bits in. And I think I'm going to stick it all together and make it look horrible and random and a bit more like The Thing. I think this is great because I think that's like the head in the film The Thing. You know, when the head falls off and it turns into some weird, creepy, spidery thing. So I will start spraying these guys up. I will airbrush some black on it to get rid of some shine. And then I'm going to zenithal. And we'll come back and I'll show you how I paint some creepy, weird, dead flesh. Or mutated, horrible, chaosy flesh. Okay, so there's the black, and with the slight zenithal, so literally just from above, making it look a little bit creepier already. So what I'm going to use for the base colour in this is some Vallejo airbrush khaki brown, adding whatever favourite white you want to make it a little bit more ghostly. So I'm using some dead white, mix it in my bowl, looking pretty good. And I'm going to paint both of them exactly the same. So I'm going to end up with hopefully some horrible dead flesh looking thing. So nice and even, as always. I'm getting all the recesses that you can, all the difficult bits first. So underneath. And yeah, I'm actually remembered to use a glove, so I won't be painting my hand today. Huzzah! I might paint my hand afterwards, just for fun. Just like old times. So, the reason I'm not pinning this model is I don't want to drill a hole in its butt. And then attach it to the model. And I can't really drill the hole in the pincers, because they're ultra fine. So I could do it to this guy, to be fair. So getting all the hard bits in the armpit, like so. So it's a very it's a light khaki. It's almost got like green tinges into it. I was hoping it looks a bit like dying flesh. And once this is drying and I'm happy with the coverage, I'm going to apply some Druchii Violet from Citadel. And I'm going to put it all over the model, not just in the recesses, and then work my way up the skin tones, making it look a little bit more dead, dying, and mutated. So like I said, a little bit of Adrushi Violet, so give it a go shake, even though it's a shade. So I'll get a fairly decent sized brush, and start working it in everywhere basically. And straight out of the bottle. I'm not going to thin this down at all. After everything, absolutely everything is covered and dry, then I'm going to start picking up the raised areas. Now you can thin this out a little bit if you want, but I'm going to go for a bit more of a contrast, a little bit more extreme purple, because I want this to stand out a little bit. So I'm going to make this thing look a bit ghastly, a little bit out of this world. Certainly from the warp. So working it in everywhere. Now the previous stage was done with an airbrush. I mean, you don't have to use an airbrush, it's just so much quicker. And this is just the paints I've picked, but obviously whatever is your favourite range, be it Games Workshop, Army Painter, Scale 75, whatever you're using, use your favourite colours and just, you know, gauge what kind of colours I'm using and go for something similar if you like this style. This is just how I paint them, just to make them look a bit weird and wonderful. Try to go outside your comfort zone once in a while, try to push yourselves, and it'd be a bit more eye-catching, definitely something abnormal. Alright, I carry on with this. I'm going to come back when it's completely dry. Okay, so once the violet has dried thoroughly, make sure it really has dried thoroughly, you can see already these guys are starting to look a little bit creepy. You know, just a little bit creepy. So I am going to then, with a slightly smaller brush, use a little bit of, this is a Games Workshop paint, it's a Citadel paint, this is Araka Flesh. So it's, in my opinion, quite a dead, fleshy look, you know, a bit of a pale skin. But yeah, this time around, get your painting tile or palette, or whatever you like to use. Make sure your brush is at a very fine point. And I am going to use, I'll get that out of the way, a painting tile. So I use a tile, but feel free to use a wet palette or whatever you like to use. Get a little bit of paint on your brush and just get a rather fine point on your brush just by doing a bit of that. Okay, so what we want to do is start bringing up the raised areas now. So I'm going to start picking out areas like this. You really get the highest point possible with this particular brush. Later on we'll go for a lighter colour again and pick out all the edge highlights, but that's basically what you want to do, something like that. Pick out all the bits that are basically the lightest purple, so the highest points in the skin, so just like that. So what we're going to get left with is all the recesses are going to be purple, that weird kind of mutated colour. So I'll keep going until we finished the whole model. And I think less is more sometimes with this, so if you think you're going too heavy, just take a step back and have a look, and do you really need to add some more? That is the question. I suppose it depends how weird and wonderful you want to make it look, so how purple you want the end product to be. So I'm not going to cover every bit of it, Just the areas like that. Okay, I'll keep going with this off camera until it's completely done, because you don't want to see me painting this for the next 5 hours. Next, what I like to do is take a little bit of Pallid Witch Flesh by Games Workshop. Bit of Citadel paint going on there. And use a good old makeup brush as a dry brush. Or if you have a decent dry brush, Artis Opus, fantastic make. They do amazing dry brushes. So you can use something like that. Or even a cheap brush. It looks a bit splayed. It's quite wide. You don't want it too thin. And get a little bit of the paint on a palette. Work it into the brush. And then, once you have just enough to cover the brush, rub it in a bit of towel or tissue. And a good trick to see if it's dry enough is back of your hand or something and just see if it's putting down. You want it so it's just noticing on like your fingerprints or any detail on the knuckle here. So you can just about notice it. So it's just to make the higher areas a little bit more crisp. So you don't have to dry brush. You could always spend some time if it's not a horde army or a big gribbly like this. If you want it super neat, I recommend using a regular brush, but I am using a dry brush because this is a bit of a beast, this guy. Doesn't matter if it's a bit messy, so I'm going to work his buns a little bit there. So you can see it's just making them a little bit crisper on the surface. And the idea is this purple is going to be like, there's a purple tinge to his flesh, but the most purple areas are going to be the deepest recesses. So he's still not going to be purple, he's not going to have this dead flesh, this pallid witch flesh colour, but somewhere in between, so he's a bit grotesque. He's got that taint to his skin. The detail on the face there. You can see the face is really starting to pop already. So these are just the basic colours. And what I'm going to do next is all the bits I want to call horns, you know? So you can see I'm picking all the muscle definition out there. So do I think that bit there should be a horn? Those bits here I definitely feel should be horns. So I'm painting the outermost tips. So in a minute I'll paint the horns. So it's not looking bad. It's not looking bad. Really pick up some detail there. I think Pallid Witch Flesh is a lovely colour. Brilliant for any skin. Just picking out some detail on the spine there. Like so. Okay, I'm going to carry on until I've had enough, or I think the model's had enough. So next for the horns, I'm going to use a bit of Dryad Bark. So this is going to be for the base of the horns. I want to have a bit of a contrast. So I get a little bit of the palette, just a little bit of water. Get a nice point with your brush. So what I mean for horns, whatever you think horns are on this thing, so I'm going to get as close as I can to the purpley flesh, just like that. Okay, it's just like that. Get a nice base colour. For anything you think possibly is bone or talon or horn, anything like that on this model, because it's your interpretation, because I'm not entirely sure if those are talons or horns or whatever, but I think I will paint them in the same manner, because in the back is pretty much the same material, I would imagine. Protruding things. So I'm going to do it in the same manner. And this stuff covers rather well, it's pretty good. So I'm going to carry on doing that. Once the bone is all covered, I like a little bit of flayed one flesh and add to the dryad bark. So I'll add a little bit to the dryad bark. Get a fairly even coverage. It's mixed nicely. That's about 50-50, and I'll add a little bit of water to that as well. So what I'm going to do is not a neat line, but go quite far down, almost to the base of where the dryad bark starts, and make a bit of a jagged line, not too neat, and try to start blending the colours of the bone. Just like that. So like I said, nearly to the base, not quite, so you still got that dark section there. We will be picking up all the horns, all the talons, like so. A little bit on his head, a little bit here. Just like so. And the next stage will be more flayed one flesh again. So probably about 2 flayed one fleshes, if that makes sense, to 1 dryad bark. So, and once again, not all the way to the base of the horns and bones. Like so. And the next stage will be neat flayed one flesh. And once again, not all the way to the base. After your first layer of flayed one flesh, you might want to put another layer on. So make it as smooth as possible. So a little bit of water and just cover the whole thing. So this time around, with a thinned layer, I like to go all the way to the base. So you've got the really dark section pretty much at the base, and this time go all the way to the bottom with a slightly thinned layer of flayed one flesh. So like that, all the way down. Of course, the quick way to do this would be just flayed one flesh and then a little bit maybe of Agrax around the base to make the base darker, but I'm trying to get a smooth finish and try not to use any washes at this stage. I'm trying to make it look a bit more natural. a bit of thinned out Phlegon flesh. So a tiny bit of water or medium, whatever you like to use. Like I said, I'm not putting too much effort into this guy because I want him to be a bit grubby, a bit dark. So on all the horn sections, all the bone. Okay, carry on. Next, when that's all dry, I like to use a little bit of pallid wych flesh and just start getting the tips of the horns there. And just start bringing the tips up a bit brighter. With the dryad bark at the base, it should shine through the thin layer, making it look like you've got a bit more of a blend of the bone and the horns. So just like so. Next, I do like a little bit of Agrax as an overall wash on the horns. I think it makes it a little bit more realistic, but not neat. So a little bit thinned out, and start from the tip of the horn or bone or whatever you're using down to the base. So that's still quite neat. So I'm going to thin that out a bit more. So you'll find that the base is still the darkest section, like so. It's the same trick again. Right, so it should still pick up some of the cracks and things on the bone without having the tip too dark. Want a bit more grimy, grubby, more realistic. Bone in nature isn't, or talons and things like that, isn't too bright, too clean. They're normally well used and grubby in nature. It's only after they're dead and world eaters polish the bone, or even predator, are they that brilliantly white. So I'm going to add a bit of grubbiness to it with a bit of Agrax Earthshade. Okay, so that's when the Agrax is dry. And now I have put some Mephiston Red, one of my favourite colours, from Citadel on the claw, and I have thinned it out and thinned it out until it got to the base. So it looks a bit more pinky, purpley when it meets the purple, funny enough. And I've put a off-white, a slightly grey, bluey grey, on the eye. Because when I paint the eye up, I'm not going to make it look like a cat eye or anything. I'm going to make it look like a large human eye. And I'm going to make it cataract-y. So what I mean by that is put a wash of a whitey bluey colour over the top, so the eye looks like it's a bit dead, a bit faded. Rather than a bright, brilliant eye, I don't think that would really work. So when the claw is dry, I like to have a bit of a sponge. So I drip off a sponge from the corner of an old blister pack, or any old packing sponge will do, and get your favourite black. So for this I'm using an Abaddon black, or Abaddon black, depends how you say it. I'm just going to sponge a bit of the excess off. So on the claw I'm just going to sponge a bit of black on the tips and the outermost edges. So sponge, 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 sponge. Just a little bit like that to make it a bit more natural. Like so. If that will actually pick up. So just to make it look a little bit more like crustacean or something. A bit more black at the tip. Just like that. Bit of texture, something a little bit different. Okay, and we'll start with the eye. So pick whatever colour you want for the eye, so a blue or green, anything like that. So for the eye, what I did was a blue blob, not too technical, and then a couple of lighter blue dots in that blob. Then I added a Corvus black center, so an off black center. So hopefully the eye has a little bit of different colour there. Next I will bust out a little bit of Carroburg Crimson, which is great for around the eye to make it a little bit bloodshot, but it's also good for any sores or any bits where the creature has morphed and skin's pulled and it's kind of still sore, I guess. So I'm going to put it around the head here, because you can see that looks a bit angry. Just a little bit there, just tease it about. Where else would be angry? I would say probably around the claw there as well. Around the spines, possibly. Certainly around here, where there's a claw emanating from his chest. Looks a bit angry. Also a bit in there as well, where he's gained an extra limb. On the other model, the spider model, definitely going to use more of this stuff, like where the spider body is morphed out of whatever body he had before. So I'll probably thin that out a little bit around the face. Don't want it so neat when it meets the skin. I want to blend it a little bit. And I certainly want to water down a bit of it for the eye itself. I'm going to make the eye look a bit pink, look a bit angry. Anywhere like that. Okay, so once you've painted up your lovely beautiful blue eye, easy for me to say, if you want to make it look a little like a bit like it's got cataracts, I recommend a little bit of Apothecary White contrast, just thinned out slightly, gives it a nice kind of fuzzy feel. You know, it's not crisp, it's definitely undead or something of that type. So, you know, it's definitely undead or something like that. And then you could always put a bit of hard coat or something on there just to make it a bit shiny, or a bit of gloss varnish. So you probably noticed there is a little bit of blood spatter there and there, and that was the same technique with the claw, just a bit of sponge, and I used a little bit of blood for the blood god, and I've got a little bit on his belly and his legs and a little bit on his pecs as well, and you can see a little bit, I put blood for the blood god in the corner of his mouth, just running out slightly. And I've put a couple of grass tufts on. So the next thing is I'm going to put a little bit of pigment on the base, but that's entirely optional because that's what the rest of my army is painted like. And then I'm going to paint the rim of the base black and show you the final piece. So what I mean by pigments is something along the lines of this. It just adds a little something to your base. It's a different kind of medium than paint. It gives a bit of a chalky, dusty feel. So adding different mediums really gives it a bit more sense of realism. So I'm using Vietnam Earth, and I think this is great. I've done a product review on this before in the past. Check it out. But yeah, brilliant stuff. You'll see in a minute. Okay, so there you have it. They're both painted up. And like I said, this is the what I call the generic looking. So obviously you can swap the faces out and swap the claws and stuff, but they all kind of look that kind of pose. You know, that kind of Hulk looking thing, massive shoulders, you know. So I've gone with the spines, a crab claw, and funny enough, when I did this one, I actually put a crab claw on it as well, but that's a Tyranid crab claw. But you will definitely see more of these from me in the future. I am not just making these two. I think they're fantastic. I'm probably going to make like 4 or 5 up, because, you know, if you want to do that Chaos Boon, that stratagem in 40k, you know, there's a chance you could turn into a spawn. It'd be nice to run maybe a couple units possibly, just to see what they're like, just to be a bit irritating and a bit creepy. On this one here, I finished off, I did put a couple of white dots on the spidery like eyes, then put some Ard Coat on there, which is a GW gloss varnish, just to make it look a bit glossy. So all my bases, I know what you're thinking, you know, with Chaos there should be lots of skulls and stuff on the bases, but I'm playing a campaign, or hopefully we'll play a campaign when this is all over, with the 2Ps podcast. If you've ever heard of those guys, check them out. Meet up with those before, obviously, COVID. Almost every year we play 40k campaigns. And the idea is I'm going to collect skulls and trophies as I go. So if I kill some, let's say, Necrons, next year I play these guys, there'll be some Necron heads on the base. So that's my personal preference, that's just what I'm doing. But yeah, I had a lot of fun painting these guys. It's just, you know, it's fairly quick paint scheme. Just wanted them to be a bit dark and grubby and grimy and a little bit scary. So it looks like they're holding hands, so maybe they're not quite so scary, you know, husband and wife maybe. Weird. But yeah, so next time I'm not going to do crab claws. I think I've overdone the crab claws now. 2 models, both with crab claws. But the only issue with this kit, well, 2 issues possibly, is it's a little bit dated, so it is a little bit chummy with the facial expressions on some of the head options. And I do think possibly there's too many options, because I'm really indecisive, and it didn't take me very long to paint these at all. It took me an evening to paint both of these guys, but it did take me a day pretty much to decide how I'm going to build them. The legs thing on this guy, I did think it was pretty cool to lock the legs off and to turn them into spider legs. That didn't take me very long to figure out at all. But yeah, it does annoy me how, you know, a lot of these guys are supposed to be offset, they're not supposed to be symmetrical, and that bothers me. But I did have a lot of fun with these guys. Yeah, the kit's a bit dated, so please GW, if you want to update the Spawn kit, that'd be great. And I'm going to make more of them in future with the Spawn kit, with a few Tyranid pieces, maybe a couple of Orc pieces, loads of stuff from out the Games Workshop range. So I do think a lot of the parts are interchangeable. If not, a little bit of green stuff wouldn't go amiss. Right, thank you very much for watching, guys. If you like this video and you think it is a bit random, a bit weird, please hit that like button. And if you don't like it, obviously, please tell us why before you hit the dislike button. And if you haven't done already, please subscribe for some more great content. Thank you for watching, and hobby safe.